Today's podcast is with a world champion athlete. Hank McGregor is a real legend in his sport, having won more events than anybody in history. We're going to be speaking about the different disciplines he's involved with, a little bit about his influence from his father on a young age and how he plans to influence his children. We're going to go into his diet, into his training routine, and a little bit about how he lives and operates here in Ballito, South Africa. Hank, welcome and thanks so much for joining us on the show.
Oh, thanks so much for having me.
Good to see you. I want to kick off with just tell us a little bit about your sport and tell us a bit about the different disciplines. You know, you hear about paddling, canoeing, rowing. It's a bit confusing, but just give us in a nutshell all the difference.
Look, there's quite a few. I found out when I went to the World Paddle Awards that there was 15 different disciplines of paddling, which I'd never heard of. But the main ones that we sort of deal with in South Africa is we've got surf ski paddling, which is pretty much an ocean racing, kayak. You do it in the sea, so that would be classified as surf ski racing. And then river racing, which is pretty much taking a canoe, which is 5.4 meters long for an individual boat, down rapids. Pretty much, I would say the most common event would be in Durban, would be known as the Doozy Canoe Marathon. In Cape Town would be the Berg River Canoe Marathon. And then we have flatwater marathon champs, which is we classify it as flatwaters. So it would be you either do marathon or you do sprints. And the sprinting aspect is what you'd see at the Olympic Games. And the marathon aspect is senior men, for instance, do 30 kilometers with different, I think about 7, depending on the course, 7 or 8 portages where you got to like jump over an obstacle, run 100 meters, put back in, and they do it on like a 3.5 kilometer lap. So it's quite a cool thing for the crowd to watch. And then a lot of people always get confused with rowing and canoeing, or the difference is rows you face backwards to go forwards, whereas we face forwards to go forwards, and we have like our controls at our feet, we pretty much you steer your own boat, whereas in a lot of times in rowing, obviously the cox would steer the boat right at the back, and I would say that's pretty much
in a nutshell.
Our nutshell with regards to the events that I would do. There is other events like fun playing in plastics, was down rapids where you see the guys doing like flick flacks and stuff like that in big white water, shooting waterfalls and stuff. And then there's the slalom event, which is quite a pointy looking boat. It's got no rudder, got no steering mechanism, and you go through like these gates, they call them gates, down like a man-made course, and that's another discipline. It's actually one of the most popular sporting watched events in the Olympic Games. I think it was ranked 4th of the highest sort of with regards to spectator friendly. That's pretty much if you had to find the paddling aspect or different disciplines in South Africa. But the slalom is very small, even though it's an Olympic event. Same as the sprinting, which is pretty much like an oversized swimming pool going down the lane. So a lot of people don't enjoy it because it's quite a lonely sport, and it's bloody tough. Whereas the river racing is a lot of fun, and surf ski racing is a lot of fun because you're in the ocean, and it's like a family-friendly sort of event.
Surf ski and river, those are the two main ones you do.
And I'll say flat water. I've done the sprinting circuit. I did it for.
You said the marathon's 30k. How long is the sprint?
Sprint ranges between 200 meters and 500 meters and 1,000 meters. Those are pretty much the for senior men at the Olympics. There's a 200 and 1,000, and then I think women's only a 200 and a 500.
Okay.
So and it's held on the rowing course. So it looks exactly the same as the rowers do, pretty much down the same lanes. Looks like a giant runway, and except we're facing forwards and they're facing backwards. And there's always been this thing between rowers and canoeists or paddlers, because it's like who's faster. But the 8s definitely can go at 2,000 meters, whereas on a short stuff we're quicker. So
and you can go on your own, which is
Yeah,
practical, you know.
Yeah, so we can. Whereas in a single scull, you would have to steer with your oars. It's a little bit. I mean, and they're super narrow, and you sit on top. Whereas a canoe, you sit inside. So, or I shouldn't say canoe because internationally, we would say we kayakers.
Okay.
Canoes is like an Indian kayak. It's an open frame boat hull, and you normally paddle with one arm.
Yeah, I'm picturing like those things that do this.
That's pretty much where it came from.
Okay.
So that's where like a high watha, or they always came with it, you know, different sayings or whatever. Pocahontas would be paddling with one. That's pretty much a canoe, but in South African terms, we say we canoeist. But if you go overseas, you say canoeist. They'd be like, but you kayak. So yeah, that's where it's a little bit different.
And tell me, surf ski, how far do you go there? Like, what's the average race distance there?
International circuits, your ranges between 20 to 30 kilometers. And there's some longer distance races. Like a signature race is the World Open Ocean Championships, which is in Hawaii. So you race from one island to another. And it's 52 Ks. So you pretty much can't see the other island when you start. You're just like paddling offshore.
What would 30 Ks take you in the ocean? I mean, it depends obviously on the conditions, of course, but like on average.
So the ocean racing is pretty much based around downwind racing, which is like surfing out at sea. The waves are actually bigger sometimes out at sea than what you actually get that break on the beach. So we pretty much catch those waves out at sea for the length of time, the distance. So if the wind's really cranking, you could probably do 30 Ks in an hour and 30 minutes if you know what you're doing.
So if the wind's pumping, you go faster.
You definitely go faster.
Okay, because you're always going to go with the wind.
That's what the races are. Yeah, going into the wind is like that's terrible. That's just head bashing. It's like paddling upstream, pretty much, if you think about it that way. So yeah, going downwind racing is a lot of skill involved, and obviously knowledge of the ocean, and obviously the conditions, and they change, you know. So that's the one thing I really enjoy about surf ski racing is that you can paddle in the same place every day, and it changes. It's not like a swimming pool or athletics track. It looks exactly the same no matter what happens. So it's not going to change. Whereas ocean, the currents change, the tide changes, the surf size changes, and the wind. So which makes it fun and enjoyable, and I guess you don't get bored.
Balancing your life, okay. So you were just telling me now you've got a full-time job, professional athlete. You know, I would never have thought that you would have to actually have a job. So I was actually quite surprised when you were telling me what you're doing, because you know, there's a lot of time and effort that goes into becoming a world champ or the best in your sport. You've got to, I just think about like the training that I see here in the facility, and you be preparing your training session, you're sleeping, you're eating. There's so much that detail that goes into it. Right. You must have a ridiculous schedule, you know. I just don't know how. Just explain a little bit how you balance the time to, you know, train, family, work, put in your meals.
I don't think it's as hard as everyone makes out it to be. It's just time management, you know, and what you're willing to put yourself through. You know, if you see it as a chore or something hard, or as your family as like a burden, well, then I guess, then it will be. And you're going to have to sacrifice things along the way. Since I've had a family, I've sacrificed a lot of other stuff, like time off, if you want to put it that way, because you don't have this just a whole day that you can train. And to be honest, I've sat with enough Institute of Sports, different bios, and different sports science and facilities, and pretty much you can only train so much before it's actually more damaging to you than actually going to improve you in the long term. So recovery is a big aspect, and I think one of the hardest things for me is to always take my foot off the pedal. You know, it's when you see results, you just want to train harder, and obviously that takes up time. And now all of a sudden you've got like a family that that you actually want to spend time with. So you don't want to be doing that extra session because the first session you did this morning was like sort of like an easy one. You like, do I really need the easy one, or should I just bang that one solid and then I've banked it now instead of having that second session for the day? I've got time with the family, you know. So for me, that's how it's sort of gone along the way. And yeah, like I said, I've spent a lot of time with different sporting institutes, and they told me my sell-by date was a long time gone, and that was in my early 30s. And I guess 11 world titles later, they're the ones that are asking me, like, how did you do it, and what do you think about it, and how do you keep yourself motivated? And I think family helps in, because your kids want to see you, you know, obviously succeed, and want to see you happy, and they get to stand on the podium when you win, and so you feel like you've got extra motivation now, even though maybe you don't have all the time in the world that you used to have. Yeah, maybe you don't think about it so much. A lot of athletes maybe overthink things. You know, at the end of the day, you just got to get out there, do the best you can, and then hopefully that's good enough. The question that I've always asked and been asked by people is, how do you know if you're good enough? You know, like what is there, like signs that tell you along the way? Is there, like, can you go get tested to see if you've got the right engine? And I've been tested from bloods to hearts to ECGs, whatever you want to call it. Yeah, like, I wouldn't say I'm anything more special than the next athlete on the start line.
So they haven't said like you've got an extraordinary high lung capacity or VO2 max?
I do have a really good VO2 max. I've been tested on a rowing machine, a treadmill, a bike. They didn't want to test me on a paddling machine because they felt like it was
unfair advantage.
Unfair, right? So they tested me on those, and I was pretty much really high up. But I wasn't like, oh my God, like I'm an alien, you know. But yeah, I do have an abnormal size heart, but that's because of excessive training and pushing the limits. And so I've got to be careful of, if I just stop tomorrow, I would have some serious problems because my heart's a little bit too big. But
so how does that complicate things?
It just means that I get to a certain level. Once I start hitting like 165 heart rate, 170, my heart doesn't go up so much anymore. It starts coming down, but just because the body seems to adapt to that loading. And that's just from training. It's just
and
from
that's
being
an
in that
advantage,
zone.
surely.
Yeah.
Because like if your lactate threshold's like at 170, which would be low for you, I suppose, but your heart's not even getting there, you could never build up lactate then.
Well, that's the theories behind it, yeah. So that's where the institutes love stuff like that, and they enjoy it, you know.
So it's not a danger for you though, having a extraordinarily large heart or a larger heart than normal.
I asked, how did I get it? They said, look, you had to have a gene. My dad's a really good athlete. He's also got a big heart. He's also pushed the limits. And
how much bigger would you? I mean, did they say?
They showed. I mean, I saw a scan like, I think it was 2 years ago, and it looked a little bit deformed. I mean, it's not a pretty thing to look at in the first place, but you can see the actual muscles around the heart itself it's enlarged, and like the doctor still said to me, he laughed because he said he's always wanted to see what my heart was like, because he's a paddler as well, and the funny part, he said, if I didn't know who you were, I would say we're in trouble. But he says, because I've known you since you were a kid and how you've grown up and what you've done in your life, he says, it's all, you know, it's like the puzzle fits. But he says, I would be worried if you walked in the door here and it would be like, okay, we've got problems here, we need to sort this out. But he says, it's just, you've got an enlarged heart, but you've trained it to be like that. And I guess
it makes sense of volume, because I mean, you didn't just start training in the last 20 years. I mean, you've been training for what? Yeah. How many?
I first started paddling when I was 6. So yeah, we're into the 35 aspect of years of training.
I can believe that'll grow a heart.
So that's it's been cool. Like I said, I got into paddling pretty much because of my dad. And who knows what I'm going to get my kid. I've got 2 boys, so we'll see.
So before we get on the topic of, the influence of a father on a son, because I think it's very a good topic to chat about, let's quickly go back on to how, what did I want to ask you now? I wanted to ask something about the work.
Yeah, look,
it was the mindset.
Yeah.
So let's talk about the psychology of the mindset of, it's not your only thing, sport. Because I think that was a really good point that you brought up earlier.
Yeah, that's true.
There's a lot of professional people that will dedicate their whole lives to one thing. And if they don't make it in that one thing, they're totally lost because their whole identity is that specific sport.
100%.
And, you were saying maybe it's a good thing that I've actually had to work for a living as well,
For sure.
Yeah,
no, that's the truth. I started working when I left school, and pretty much to enable myself to be able to race, which was my passion. It was never just to compete. It was to race to win. So for me that cost money. So sort of working in the family business. We've got a construction company, or we hire out big excavators to civils companies or construction companies. And I sort of started working like as a basic mechanic when I was young. But then I could still train in the morning, or I could train during the day. And I guess, I think the thing about an athlete is that it's quite a selfish sport. Well, I should say athletes in general are selfish because it's all about us and where we want to go and which podium we want to stand on and which medal we want to take and title we want to hold. So from that aspect, it's quite a lonely road because you don't always get to share it with everyone, and you only think about that, and then all of a sudden one day it's the titles have gone and the records have been broken, and you don't have the same sponsors anymore that are paying you, and all of a sudden you're left with an empty bank account and like nothing to show for it other than just a lifetime of racing and memories of your memories, not necessarily everyone else. So for me, I guess racing was one part of my life, and then working was the other part, and I couldn't do just one. I had to do both, and maybe in another country I could have, which I know a lot of the other guys that I've raced against, that's what they do. They're professional, and it's great. You can still have a professional mindset as an athlete, but it doesn't mean it's the only thing that you do that whole day. You can still study or race or work, and you can work before training and after training. It's just time management, whereas an athlete, we almost want to make the excuse that we have to just be an athlete because it's impossible not to make it without just being an athlete. And
do you think it's like a draw card, or do you think it's just an easy way for us to identify with something? If you think of growing up in the developmental stages we go through, figuring out like our egos and our whole persona really is an easy thing for us to do as human beings, to grab onto that identity and hold on to it as, hey, I'm Dwayne the rugby player now. Because thinking about it now, I was chatting with Pete and Butch the other day, and they were saying they're trying to go into the Sharks camp and get the youngsters to come and teach them property, because they were finding a lot of guys in their generation, they came out of rugby and then they had nothing.
Exactly.
And they were lost, and they didn't, and a lot of the guys fell into depression. A lot of them just, went really off the rails, because you go from a light of stardom, but you also your whole identity is just shaken upside down, and you don't know who you are, and you can't associate with normal people. When you say normal, like civilians, and I've seen this too in with military guys. My father, my friends, the guys that have been to the military, I've seen when they come back, they'll say like civilians, and like talk to other people as civilians. I'm like, listen, we're all normal, we're all people. Let's bring it down and let's try and see why you feel so different, And I think just listening to you, you've really balanced it out very well with having family and work and this all together, so you don't have. Maybe it seems like it now. Maybe not always the case, but
definitely not. No, it's not. I would say it's easier just to say it, but it hasn't been an easy road. And if I had the choice, I probably would have definitely taken the option of just big money, cash, being sponsored and stuff like that, and gone down that route. But I think I don't think I would have hung around I wouldn't have had the same passion about the sport or the same want. It would be all about what I can get out of it, and not maybe what I can participate or during that time, you know. And I think that's why I've stayed around, and I've actually really enjoyed it, and I've done my 10,000 hours, if they want to put it that way, on the water. So yeah, it hasn't been easy, but I definitely can't say that if I had to go back and choose it all again, that I wouldn't have chosen the same path.
Yeah.
So yeah.
That's good to know. And training here in Belito must be good.
I think
like if you could choose another area,
yeah, we're so fortunate from a sporting sort of climate to be able to train 12 months out of the year. You know, when I look at my European friends and opposition, that especially with social media nowadays, it's so easy. You know, they have to go indoors. They have to try and like train with regards to like ergos or other machinery, do a lot of gym and stuff like that, whereas I can get out and actually still paddle. I mean, winter in Durban on the north coast, can't really classify as winter, you know. With regards to if you had to live in Cape Town, I mean, there is big season change there. Whereas Durban, it's pretty much the same weather, it's just the swell gets bigger, or it rains a little bit more here and there, or it gets really hot. But there's no excuse why you can't get out there and train every day. And I think that's why I've really enjoyed living on the north coast or living up in Durban. Yeah.
What's your favourite race here in South Africa?
If I had to choose a race, I love all races, to be honest. I just love racing. I would say the Cape Point Challenge has been a special race to me. It's an ocean race. You race pretty much, or for the person that's not too clued up with what's the most southern point of Africa, you would say going around Cape Point would be the two oceans. It definitely feels like it's two oceans. The water does get a lot warmer on the one side. But yeah, it's 52 Ks. You're racing from Scarborough all the way to Fishhook. So you pretty much race around Cape Point. Unbelievable background. The setting's amazing. The water's cold. And just one thing about the race is that if the wind's blowing in one direction, on the other side it's the other direction. So you have to be the best of both. You can't just be a good downwind paddler, or you can't just get lucky. To win the race, you have to be the best, and that's what I enjoy about it. You know, there's no like real shortcuts or anything like that. You know, you can't get closer than the rocks. So pretty much it's one of those bucket ticking sort of races that we have in South Africa. So if I had to choose that, I would say that it would be my favorite race.
I've been there to the peninsula. I can only imagine how beautiful. I mean, it's a beautiful area. Yeah. So I mean, just racing it must be awesome.
No, it is. There's a lot of things swimming underneath you. And
what have you seen? Have you seen sharks? And
I've seen many sharks in my life.
Big sharks.
Big sharks.
Like what have you seen?
Sure. When I was in Hawaii, I saw the biggest tiger shark I've ever seen in my life. It was as long as my ski, and I mean, I'm talking 6 meters. This thing was ginormous. I thought it was a whale shark, and then I realized that it was a tiger shark.
Did it just come under you?
It was. I was surfing downwind, and the water's so clean there. I just came over the top of a bump, like a run, and I was going down like into the trough of this wave, and I suddenly realized that there shouldn't be rocks out here, and I just saw this submarine underneath me, and I just realized, geez, that next 1K was one of my quickest 1Ks in my life.
Yeah, so, you just don't fall off.
No, but it was cruising. I wasn't even interested in me. It was just going for a swim. So, but yeah, I've seen lots of sharks, lots of whales, lots of sea life. I've just I've been really blessed with regards to training. Your background or backyard of training is beautiful. You know?
Yeah, we have got a good I've got lucky before as well. I've seen a whale shark off the coast of Cape Verde paddling out, just like on a little plastic, you know.
Fantastic.
Paddling on the back there and dived in straight away to sea, but they move quicker than you think.
Yeah, they're quite quick, yeah.
But yeah, you do see some beautiful stuff here. And what about rivers? What's the most beautiful river race you've done here?
In South Africa, I'd say the most beautiful river is probably the Drac Descent, or we call it Jack Challenge. It's up in Underberg.
Yes, I raced it on a bicycle. I was thinking that one.
That's
It's so nice because you can see the paddlers, the runners.
Yeah.
I can imagine that being the best.
So I mean, the water's pristine.
Crystal
it's
clear.
coming straight from the mountain.
Can drink it.
Just the only problem is there's not always water.
Yeah.
So there's no dam release or anything like that, which sometimes becomes very bony, and that's the one thing. If I had to choose between rivers and surf ski, I'd always choose surf ski just because it's guaranteed water. You know? Whereas being a heavier frame guy, you struggle when it's really low in shallow waters compared to the small lighter guys. Yeah.
And what you obviously run then, right? You
you have to like rock hop, run, climb, clamber, do whatever you can, And the lighter guys, their clearance is just
so much more
than yours, so they can get over those little hippos, as we call it, and whereas you beached like a whale.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I'd say that was probably the most beautiful river race we have in our country. Yeah.
I think I must challenge myself to trying that one. I think that'll be the first one I try.
No, for sure. Why not? Wait for there's good water and then go for it.
I said to a friend of mine I did the cycle with last year, I was like, let's try do this. We've done the cycle now, let's do the run and then the paddle. That would be the ultimate.
Just wait for water though. You can check the water levels, and if there's nice water, it's fantastic. Yeah. I'm thinking if there's no water, or if it's low next year, I'm going to either do the run or I'm going to do the cycle. So
cycle's cool.
Yeah, no, but I need to get my skills up a bit because I heard it's quite technical.
Yeah,
so,
it's good fun though.
So
tell me about the father-son relationship. What you've learned, what you'll carry over with your kids. What kids do you have? You have boys, girls?
Two boys. Yeah.
Two boys.
Tell
us the good, the bad, the whole story.
I don't know. I think the good part about having boys is that they want to follow their father's footsteps, pretty much like I did with my dad. And he was a triple. Well, in the old days they used to call it Springboks. So he had his national colours in 3 different sports. So I've managed to get my national colours in a couple of different sports now. So that's been cool. But for me, it was growing up with him. First is first, second is nothing, and third you don't talk about. So that's how we basically grew up. My sister sort of bailed quite early from the sporting side of things. Once she was sort of getting out of high school, she was like, I'm out of this competitive stuff. She was never the competitive one in the family, even though she was like, I would say, the more gifted athlete. She just naturally could just rock up at a running race, and get a Natal colours or win the championships or something like that, and she never trained or anything like that, whereas I had to go and train and extra stuff before school, after school, and my dad was there to basically push me. So for me, growing up, it was like, if you've trained harder than anyone else in the world, you're going to become the best in the world. So that was pretty much how it started, and I don't necessarily want to do the same with my kids, because it's quite a lonely road, and sometimes I didn't know the difference between my dad being my coach or my dad being my father, so I never knew which was talking sometimes, and it was hard because I was as a coach, from that aspect, you're never actually good enough. You can always do more for your coach. You could have broken, if you break the world record, you could have, if you had touched or done this or strided or a little bit more or dived, you could have broken it by further. So from a coach side of thing, I could never ever be good enough. Whereas the father side, he was, he sort of was proud of me through a lot of times, but I never knew which was talking to me at the end of a race. And so it was hard. I got left at a few races, make my way home. Which was always, it's comical now, but when you're 15 or so and you get left down in Toti after a running race and you live in Hillcrest, it's quite a long way home to catch buses and stuff, and no cell phones in those days. So, and I missed it by like a half a foot of winning the race, but he believed a lot more in me than I did in myself, and I think that was always the question growing up is, how do you know if you are the next world champion? Where does it? Where's the signs or the signal or the bell that goes off saying, okay, you're going to be the next best? There isn't, and you have to actually just believe in yourself as much as your coach does, or hopefully your coach isn't a con man or con woman. I don't know, it depends. And that's the hard part. So for me, I would love my sons, if I could, for them to do something that they could have their own personal charisma that could be judged, or your aura, with regards to surfing. When Kelly Slater catches a wave, the whole crowd just is in awe and everybody's just glued to him surfing. Never mind the guy that's in the final behind him that's on the same sort of wave just behind. Nobody's looking at that. All the judges are focused on Kelly Slater, and it's because of who he is, his aura about him, the way he is, the way he handles media and stuff like that. And so from that, you're still classified as a world champion, but it's still a physical thing, but it's judged off your character and your moves, your skills. So if I had to say to them, listen, we'd rather go there than do what I did, where it's just a start line and a finish line, and the person that crosses the line first, he wins and you lose, So I chose that route, and my dad wanted me sort of to do that, and fortunately I did achieve. When I was 18 years old, I won the World Junior Championships. It was my first junior title, and before we left to get on the plane to go to Sweden, he still said to me, all the team was standing there and everyone's like waving you off and taking photos and stuff, and he put his hand out and he says, good luck. So I was like, thanks very much. And he says, here's the deal. If you win the world title and you break away, I will give you the next 4 years of your life, and I'll be able to, you can be a pro athlete, you don't have to go to varsity, I won't sell every boat that you have, but he says, if you lose or you just finish with an end sprint and win it, he says, there'll be nothing when you get home. Cool. Thanks, Dad. Yeah. So, and everyone said, hey, so what did your dad say? And are they excited? So I was like, no, I don't want to talk about what my dad said. But yeah, it was almost like he had said he had put everything on the line for me through school and everything like that, and done all the training. I was good enough physically. Now it was up to me to produce the goods when it counted, and there was a lot of pressure, and I didn't like that feeling. Fortunately, I won it by like 4.5 minutes or something. I broke away so early, it was like ridiculous. I think within the first 2 kilometers of the 20k race or 21k race, I was already on my own. But I was like sort of paddling almost in fear, like that flight or fight type of thing. So from then on, I believe that I could actually be the best in the world, because I'm the world junior champion. The only thing now is to become the best senior in the world, and that was the next step up the ladder. So fortunately, after that, I managed to win quite a few world titles, and brought them back to South Africa, not for any big money or anything like that, but that satisfaction that to stand and say that you're content, about your achievements. And I think that's quite a big thing for an athlete to actually be satisfied and actually say, like, I've achieved everything that I could have achieved, and what's next, and then set a new goal. But to actually reach the pinnacle in your sport, your chosen sport, is quite a hard thing, and I was fortunate enough to actually do it. And
you and your dad now, are you guys close?
We're still close, yeah. We've had our differences over the years, but he's always been my dad. He's always been my coach, even if he doesn't want to or not. He's my father, and I'll chat to him pretty much every day. And so we've sort of now, I don't know, we've achieved enough with regards to personal stuff, and now it's just a matter of enjoying life.
Yes, it's interesting looking back to think, like, did his psychological input in your life affect your results as a sports person? Definitely. Do you know what I'm saying? And so if he didn't have that, though, would you be the man you are today, type of thing? It's hard. It's a hard one, eh?
Yeah, I wouldn't say it's $1 million question, but it is a good question, yeah. So,
because I mean, if it's all good things, and you've achieved all the wonderful things that you have achieved, and it's made you the person you are, it's almost like, was he right in doing those? It sounds harsh. It sounds ridiculous. He sounds Russian. Like when you say it, I was thinking of the Russian kettlebell guys and the guys I've studied. It's like you're bleeding and it's just carry on going. There's no, But then you think about the paradoxical shift in thinking that you just mentioned with the sports scientist a bit earlier, where they're saying less is more.
Yeah.
And actually, you should be in a no stress zone when you try. It should feel so comfortable and natural for you, probably how it feels for you now when you rock up to an event. You're not even stressed, and you shouldn't be overtraining. You shouldn't necessarily train every day so that you feel sore the next day, and you got to train smart, like maybe keep your heart rate down for a couple sessions, train in the right zone so you're not reaching the burnout and the lactate threshold every single time.
For sure, yeah. No, that like I say, that is something over time you learn. But you got to do your apprenticeship, And I think one thing I have learned is that everyone is different, and just because even in the same family, if you get two brothers, and it'll be interesting to see what happens with my boys, but you don't always get two brothers that are identical in sports. You do get a few, but they're different mindset, and either one's pushed each other to get that. And so it'll be interesting to see what happens, but I don't really want my boys to necessarily go the same road that I went, if I had that choice. Yeah.
And how old are they now?
My eldest is 6, and my youngest is turning 2 end of the year. So,
and I mean, in your 6-year-old now, can you see athletic ability in him, like superior to other kids? Was it hard to tell?
I don't know. Like when you're growing up, like to be honest, you don't walk around like a scout, like looking at kids and saying, like, "Geez, I wonder if they're the next champion." And that's one thing I realized, like growing up, is that people, especially guys, they mature at different times. So the big guys that were at school and standard 6 or standard 7 or
same size now.
And so they, everyone catches up eventually. You all mature to a certain degree, to a certain point in your racing career. When you're hitting the 25, 26, 28, 30-year-old. There's no like, oh, he's young or he's old, or everyone's, it's even Stevens. Now it's like who wants it more is going to win the race, and that's probably for me is my highlight, if I want to put it that way, with sport, is to actually be on that start line and look left and right and see everyone's the best in their country, everyone was the best in their family, the best in their school, best in, and they've all had that same sort of support, like, hey, you're going to be the next world champion. And now it's like, today, right now, somebody's going to get that, and why can't it be you? And I think that was, for me, those moments, I look back and they're like, I can remember every single one that I've lined up at.
Yeah, I got goosebumps as you're explaining it to me. I'm like, fuck, that must be amazing.
And
to know you're that good at one thing, that is pretty special.
It's and only in the last couple of years, like, you've seen your heart rate at the start, and you can actually see what it is, and it drops off like there. Within that, when they give you a minute to line up, and everyone's lining up, and they name everybody's name from each country, and number 2, number 5, number this, like, then come there, and the commentators like, so they're like that. Right there and then, my heart rate is like, it's at the lowest that it gets to, because it's like where I want to be. It's like you're in the zone, like you're so focused. I can hear everything. You're so sensitive to your surroundings, and where you would think that your heart rate would be like flying. I don't know. Maybe other people are, but only recently, like I've gone back and actually I wonder. I mean, technology now it's incredible, and you can actually like, geez. I was like, okay, it's low, when you're under the hundreds and stuff like that, and people, it's it's going to be ready go, and you just, everything's in sync. And for me, it's just, I'm at my most relaxed because This is where I want to be. I've chosen to be here. It's not like I have to be here. I want to be here.
Yeah.
And now I'm going to get to show off all those training, all that hard times.
There's a book I've read. I think it's called Flow or Flow State or something like that. Maybe you've seen it or read it. It's like a light blue book, but it explains exactly what you're speaking about now, like with professionals inside their specific, zone or flow state.
That's it.
And that's just, you're so calm and in control. And but a normal person, when I mean normal, not a rower or put me in there.
A civilian.
A civilian, you'd be stressing,
No,
we're the sharks. How am I going to balance this thing?
You would be. No, like I say, I've been where they've actually, the one world championships, they had a heartbeat over the loudspeakers that went like doo-doof, doo-doof, and it got faster and faster because they said they're going to give us a minute countdown, and they started a heartbeat. So it just got, and then the crowd loved it. And you just embrace the moment. And I remember this always in marathon racing, coming to the last portage. It's normally within 750 meters or to a kilometer to the finish line. You have to jump out your boat, run with your boat, jump back in, like run through like sort of the crowd. And they always start playing the final countdown. And the sound travels across water. It's unbelievable. And so you can hear it from like,
I can hear the surface sometimes. I'm staying Madeline Drive here. And that's like, it's at least 450 meters. You can hear the surface.
100%.
It's ridiculous. You can't believe.
So you hear the music, and I always like got a smile on my face because this is when it counts. It's just like a movie, and now they're playing the music, and this is it. It's the final countdown, and you just like, you could either freak out or you could just embrace it and you actually go with it. And there's been like lots of videos and I mean, because now with drones and stuff, everyone's filming and you can...
it's amazing how like the drones and like you say with the watches at the heart rate, it's a different game now.
It's huge. It's huge.
Science now.
Yeah. And you can see, and a lot of times I got a smile on my face, And it's like, people are like, aren't you hurting? And you're just like, yeah, I guess I was, but I wanted this. I wanted to be there. And you can see the hurt and pain on everyone else's face, and you're not like you're a sadist, but you're not as bad as them, and you're gonna win it.
Makes you feel even better.
Yeah, you're gonna win it, and that it's like a drug. It's just something that you can't get enough of, and when you, like I say, when you've earned that ability, it's a fantastic place to be in, and I never want to take it for granted, and you never know when it's going to be your last time. So I've really enjoyed the times that it has happened in my life.
Yeah, congratulations on all of those achievements.
Sure,
there's like such a big list. I mean, I browsed through some of them and I was like, yes, there's just too many to even remember here. Alex, world champion of everything. But tell me please about the training routine that you, and do you even have a training plan, or do you just wake up and be like, hey, it's a good day, the weather suits me, let's go surf ski?
So I normally, I do like a couple of different disciplines of paddling. So depending on which season it is, paddling for me is 12 months out of the year. Racing is 12 months out of the year. So I don't have that off season. Maybe because I'd get stale or bored, I can't tell you. But the major surf ski races, what I do is I take the event and sort of just work back to where I am now, like to the current day. And if it's 3 months or 4 months away, then I can sort of put a program together, make sure that you do the hard yards with regards to if it's a distance race, an LD race like 50 Ks or something, you're going to be out there for 3 hours or so. You need to put the time in, work on different skills. So you keep you can always improve with regards to skills. You can always get better. Like I hate it when somebody says, I can't get any better. And I'm like, you can. Everybody can get better.
Who says that to you?
No, like you've like just talking to people in general, they're like, it must be the equipment, or it must be my coach, or they'll never blame themselves.
Yeah,
it was the conditions, or I got unlucky, or something like that. But you can always better yourself, and I think a lot of people, especially athletes that have won, the hard part is to lose the next one. And they feel it's like a bitterness that comes over them. And for me, it's always been when I lose, it's almost like the greatest motivation day out, because you get to analyze that race. You see where you lost. Maybe I could have improved there. Maybe you could have done this. Chat to more people. Whereas when you win, I can't tell you all the races that I've won. Put it this way. I remember like there's been some signature ones, but majority of them is just a blur. Whereas I can remember every one that I've lost. And for me, that's what motivates me is not to retain the title, is to get the title back if you've lost it.
Yeah.
And the hard part for me is over the years is to be the target of myself. When you are world champion and you've won it 2 or 3 or 4 titles in a row or 5 titles in a row, like everyone's just talking about stats, will you become the greatest? You've lost that sort of dartboard target face of your opposition, and it's your face now. And now it's like, I think the hard part for me is to keep looking at myself and try and find my faults. But that's the truth. You can always get better. So even when you are the best in the world and you've won it quite a few times, you can still improve, because deep inside like where your faults are. You just don't always want to acknowledge it. And you don't want to voice it to other people, because you don't want to take criticism as well. So when you stand on the top of the podium, nobody can criticize you other than yourself. And I think that's been something that I've come to terms with, that I can be better. So I only hold the world title on the podium, and that's how I've sort of gone through the last sort of 10 years of my life, is that when I step off the podium, I'm the same as the 2 guys that were on either side of me, because they have the greatest motivation to win that world title next year, because they came that close.
Yeah.
I mean, the guy's right here, and if you don't have that attitude that he has, you're gonna lose, and I think you become complacent, and you sort of become arrogant, and it goes to your head, like they always say. You don't come off cloud 9, and you still like reminiscing about those days, and you can watch a video of, oh geez, I'm so good, and then all of a sudden 12 months goes quickly, and you're back on that same start line, and you don't have the hunger to become the world champion. You're now defending your title. It's a completely different mindset. It's a terrible feeling, because you have nothing to gain, because you already have it. It's now there's only 2 things that can happen. You're either going to retain it or you're going to lose it. And everybody else on that start line wants it, and you just want to retain it. So you're on defense, whereas they're on attack. And I think that's something that I've sort of come to terms with regards to keeping the attack mindset and taking away the arrogance from myself. And if you had to come to my house, you won't find the world titles. I don't have them hanging around. I don't have a shrine of myself. It's just, there'll be some medals there or something like that. But something that I've definitely learned is that to still retain or become or stay on the top, it's harder than to actually get to the top. And I'm not being arrogant in saying that just because I've been there. It's just the fact that it's harder to motivate yourself once you are the best in the world. And,
I mean, like, I've studied sports psychology, and everything you're saying makes perfect sense, and when you look at great sports people over the years, as you're speaking, I'm thinking of guys like Mike Tyson and specifically Roy Jones Jr. and these kinds of guys that have gone through these pitfalls, and it's exactly what you're saying. You were on a specific cloud. You probably didn't have that determination again to keep training as hard. No. Let's just go back to the training, so we not get too deep into the psychology, because we're going to talk too long there. But periodizing that session, so let's say you take a 3-month block, you do all that yourself. You periodize, okay, I'm going to train here, here, and here. Yeah. And then is it only paddling, or do you mix in some weight training? You said you do a lot of running as well?
Yeah, so the thing about paddling is, depending on what event you're training for, if you're doing like the Doozy Canoe Marathon, obviously there's a lot of trail running involved. You got to do a lot of tripping down the river, is what we would call it. scouting the river for different levels, different channels. So that takes a lot of time. The actual hardcore training is obviously to try and fit in the time or simulate the time that you would spend racing. So if it's a 2-hour day or 3-hour day over 3 consecutive days, you need to somehow simulate that to a certain degree. So your body is going to break down. So you don't want to do that too late, closer to the race. So like I say, depending on what events are coming up, I would sort of analyze my training and build it off that. And obviously when you're doing a lot of running, it does break down your body quite a lot. So from a gym aspect, you still try and maintain your strength, because paddling is a lot to do with your upper body, even though your legs and your trunk and your core is probably super, super important just from stability, and your trunk itself to control it's not always just about biceps or anything, but you still need to be physically strong. And I think, doing the basic sort of gym sort of workouts is important, but it's not the only thing. And I think a lot of people, they either want to do one or the other. You can do all of them, but just either get somebody to help you or base yourself with regards to, don't arrive at the next day and still feel sore from doing something that you didn't necessarily need to do, but you just decided to do it on the last minute. And I think that's what happens with gym. People start doing gym, they get stiff, they get sore, and then it compromises the actual training on the water. And then all of a sudden they're like, okay, I'm not going to do gym anymore. And then they sort of like scrap that idea. Whereas I disagree. It's just, build it up slowly so that you don't like sort of walk out of the gym and you're shaking and you're falling down the steps, for instance. You must do it so that it's your cross training. It's not your only training. Mm-hmm. And I think it's important. Whereas a lot of people only want to do necessarily the sport that they're in, and they're not prepared to do anything else because they believe that the more time you focus on that event or that sport, the better you're going to get. Yes, to a certain degree, and no, you're not going to be able to strengthen your whole body, or how would you say, you want to become overall fit.
It's conditioning. So you condition your body to be able to handle muscle tears and
100%,
at that level, and obviously make your joints bulletproof, because if you train the right way, 100%. Your body becomes better aligned, and center of core strength and good posture. That's going to put you in the best stead for your training.
All helps, So I get a lot of people ask me, like, what do you do for training? You need to find out what you need to do, more. And it's not just because I do it, that's the blueprint.
One thing you said that just stuck in my head was simulate the event. So if your event was, let's say, a 56k, surf ski race, would you do 56Ks? Would you go and do that?
No, not necessarily. No, I would try and simulate the pace. It's of what the race is. So that's always hard when you're trying to break the record, for instance, because you need to go faster than anybody's ever gone before. So for me, then it's a matter of doing maybe shorter sort of training, but obviously at a faster speed than what I would probably race at, or be able to have that mindset that I can slow down a little bit, and by doing that, I could probably last an extra 10Ks. So that's how I would train. So I train definitely harder than I'll ever race.
Okay. Yeah. How many days a week?
I do exercise 7 days a week, paddling 6 days a week. I don't do 2 paddling sessions a day. I've did that one stage, and I just felt like I was like overdoing it. Like I didn't need to do it. It was a bit of a waste session. So I do like either a run or a cycle, or a gym and a paddle. Like on those days, I'll try and paddle 6 days a week, and ultimately do a run depending on the time. And obviously during lockdown, it's been a bit different.
And diet? Do you follow a specific diet?
Just try and eat healthy. I remember going to Institute of Sport in Cape Town, and their dietitian, I had to give like what I ate, and she freaked out. She was like, you have to be the most unhealthy athlete I've ever analyzed. And Tim Noakes was standing next to me, and she still said, like, if this guy actually had to eat properly, he'd become the world champion. So Tim was like, he is the world champion. So she was like, sure, okay, well, you'd win by further. So I said, perfect. Let me let's see what happens. So I went on a diet, and within a week and a half, I was 5 kgs heavier. I just went back to drinking Cokes and chowing pies and eating bacon and eggs in the morning. And I don't necessarily think that the diet is the most important thing. I just think it's all about fuel. It's just sometimes it's a waste of fuel. Some people are just eating stuff they shouldn't eat. So over the years, I've realized that this is important to eat, especially if you're going to race this amount of time, or this is a healthy diet. So follow that. It mustn't be a forced thing. And I think when you're young, you can pretty much eat anything and you can still look good and stuff. But as you get older, you realize that you get love handles or this, or somebody's like, yes, you're not looking so cut anymore, and you realize, geez, okay, maybe I need to change my diet. So I think the hardest thing about a diet is not to say that I'm on diet or I'm following this. It must be natural. It's what I actually want to eat. You want to eat healthy because it's good for you, and at the same time, if you're going to perform better. And I had that sort of upbringing with regards to just eat what you want to eat, just train harder, And I believe that you can do both. You can still train hard and follow a good diet. So my wife's pretty healthy, so we eat good meals, a lot of veg, still eat red meat, but it's not the only thing. Whereas before I used to eat like a lot of red meat, maybe not so much pasta anymore, maybe some potatoes and stuff like that. So different carbs, but I spend a lot of time with dietitians, and you get to know what's healthy. And to be honest, everybody actually knows what's healthy. You just sort of try and, I can have a little bit of this, or I can cheat today, and you give yourself a reason why you can do that. And to be honest, I think it's good. It's good fuel. So if you want to be a really top athlete, you need to eat well. But then you can't follow somebody else's culture just because they come from Kenya and they've grown up with pap and this and stuff, and they drink like tea with like 10 or 12 cups of sugar, that it's going to work for you because you didn't come from Kenya and you didn't used to run to school. So you need to adapt to your culture as well. And I think that's a hard thing about racing internationally, is to be able to, you can't take home with you. So you need to be able to adapt, and you can't be shy to eat something that you've never eaten before, and because it might actually be good for you. But a lot of people will never try that, and you see when you're new on the circuit, they want to have mom's cooked meal at the World Championships the night before. But if you're in China, that's not going to happen. You've got to learn to adapt and eat what you and know food. I think you need to actually find out what's actually really good for you, and don't be. Don't just be naive and just rock up and say, what do you think? Would that be good for you? You must know what's actually good for you, or you must take some food with you or something like that. So that's how I've learned. Yeah. I
think it's one of the most important lessons. I mean, when I use the term diet very loosely, but it's been debunked. Every single plan or diet or meal thing. Science hasn't proved one yet.
Right. No.
And like you say, just eating what you consider to be healthy and enough calories for your daily movement is what's 100%. Really what it comes down to. 100%. You want to give your body the best fuel, but you need to give it enough fuel.
Exactly.
And guys that aren't paddling and running and training every day haven't built up the muscle mass that requires as many calories as you do, or that your muscles can burn that many calories, and obviously you're using up so many calories in a day, so you can eat more. And,
sure.
And that's where the lessons should come in. It was one of the best lessons I learned very young at 11. I was slightly overweight. I was like 5 kgs overweight. So I joined my mom on this thing called Weight Watchers. And basically how Weight Watchers worked, it was a point system.
Okay.
And like an apple, for example, I can't remember the exact thing, but an apple was 1 point and chocolate was 5. And you were only allowed 20 points a day.
Okay.
So already at that stage, I was like, okay, now what do I need to cut out? Okay, sugar. I don't need that to make the tea.
100%.
Sugar out, tea standard. Milk, also that was another calorie that went eventually. And it's just small things like that. And you're learning it. And it should be in the school syllabus, I believe. That, and also simple bodily movements and bodily awareness, so like how to exercise correctly in a balanced manner, and the different forms and types of exercise, and the signs and symptoms of simple like overtraining. And if we did that, I think we'd have a lot healthier people.
Definitely. No, for sure. There'll be a lot more people to race against.
Yeah. It's interesting that you don't count calories, or you don't do these. A lot of the guys, especially in like sports like yours, where it's so sensitive to how much you weigh, Because, you got power output versus weight, you know.
100%.
So
No, for sure. Like I say, it's
you've got it dialed in though. It's like internal.
You
can feel it.
pretty much know, and you know when you haven't eaten correctly, you actually don't have the same energy levels, or you haven't slept well.
You can feel it.
You've drunk too much alcohol
Definitely.
or wine or whatever. You can feel it the next day. So
I'm always surprised by guys that can't. Like I'll speak to a lot of friends or even clients, but I suppose it's doing it for so many years where you can actually feel when you're feeling good, healthy, on top of that level.
100%, yeah.
And you'll know, hey, I'm actually, I've had too much wine or too much pasta. I need to have a juice now and cleanse this. Juice and soup today, we're cleansing.
There we go, for sure. You'll have your own cravings. Yeah.
That's it.
But it doesn't necessarily mean, that's one thing I've learned, is what works for me doesn't necessarily work for you, and vice versa. So, and a lot of people just like force it, and then they hate it, and then all of a sudden they just stop and that's it, time out, I'm done, they blow up like a blowfish.
Unfortunately, it does go like that. When you restrict yourself from things, the rebound is so much worse. So it's a very dangerous thing, and we're not giving advice here, just like experience.
No, for sure.
But Hank, thanks again for coming on. It's been great having you, and I think we've got a lot of insight.
For sure. Hopefully I can help them anyway.
We'll
have to come to the gym sometime.
Yeah, you'll have to. But thanks for the chat.
100% shot. Thanks.